we've been walking a long ways, and I was hungry, and... Did you say something?
She was hungry.
She was hungry.
Well, how would you like to have someone come along and pick something off of you?
Oh, dear. I keep forgetting I'm not in Kansas.
Come along, Dorothy. You don't want any of those apples.
Are you hitting my apples on what they ought to be?
Oh, no. It's just that she doesn't like little green worms.
Oh, you...
I'll show you how to get apples. All right. I guess that did it.
Hi, and welcome to Ward 13. It's a rather gloomy Wednesday, and my guest today is Jim O'Connell. Jim, does this rainy weather remind you of Ireland?
Not really.
It's a joke.
Not really. No, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, there is some rain in Ireland, but Ireland's not Seattle, and it's not it's not southern India during the monsoon. We get a little bit of rain, and we call them nice, gentle days, thank God. And
300 out of the year, 300 days of rain.
I don't think so.
Well, that's what they always told me.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. You should just go there. It's the easiest thing in the world,
I tried to become a citizen, Jim.
I'm going over there in a few weeks, looking forward to it. So
we found out, though, our grandfather, because of history, my Irish grandfather turned out to be Irish American. He was born in 1869. This is my grandfather.
Okay.
So we're looking for, he's known as James Patrick Horgan, or Patrick James Horgan, interchangeable. Yeah. You go to Met County Mayo, and you look at the parish records, it's like John Smith in 1660 Massachusetts.
Right, yeah.
It's
There's
like
a lot of Horgans.
We couldn't find him. Then we found out he's from Arlington, Massachusetts.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go.
But, because my brother and I coveted an EU passport. My brother now is both an American citizen and a subject of the Queen.
Oh, he is?
In Britain, yeah.
How did he do that?
Because he was stationed in the UK in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Because that was like our big battleship during the Cold War. And he married an English woman. Oh. And he bought a house, and, he's still has his New Hampshire accent. Oh, yeah.
What part of England?
He lives near Cambridge, the university.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a village named after some of the whatever Swedish Norsemen warriors. It's called like Stolangroft.
Oh, nice.
It's like a name going back 1,500 years. Whether it was the Danes, because that was the Dane law, East Anglia.
Oh yeah, and East Anglia is beautiful. I mean, it's a really nice up into Norfolk.
He used to live in Mumford, which is where Thomas Paine comes from. But that'd be a whole different show.
Yeah, Tom Paine, yeah.
Tom Paine was a hero in the 60s, not Alexander
George Washington's
Hamilton.
grandparents came from not far from there either.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
In Putnam, about 25 miles from Cambridge, in Essex, though.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Hey, we're going to have we're going to talk about education a little later, and Peter Argeropoulos, who's running for school board at large.
He is
going to call in at 3:40. But I've been writing like a demon. I've actually published 16 articles in 5 days, and the typos will show you that that's true. And Brendan, can we see the photo number 3? Yeah, this is a article I published, which has got a tremendous amount of views. Victoria Sullivan photographed with armed men on day of Black Lives Matter vigil. Now, at times of other politicians, she's denied that she was with them. But if my article is on medium.com, not the best platform, by the way, because you only get 5 free articles.
Oh.
But can we, I'm going to show you another one, Jim, because somebody was looking at me. Can we go with 5 annotated? There were 6 assault rifles. That was a Chipotle and a mattress shop. Right where, and there's Victoria Sullivan. And if you look at, can we see Forbes, the loop? She's just like beaming.
Right.
Now, Joyce Craig, our mayor, and Governor Sununu were trying to handle a situation that got out of hand because Joe Kelly Levasseur partly was just being Joe Kelly Levasseur. I mean, it's like, you know, it's going to rain in Ireland at a certain time, or in Seattle for 6 months of the year.
Right.
That's Joe Levasseur. And, you know, I had never seen the photo, but somebody I know found it. And, you know, Jim, I went to her Facebook page, and every post between when Joyce first beat her till November of 2020 is gone. It's all gone. All the stuff she said about, you know, I'm sure, you know, whatever she had said. Because I understand she asked for an 8 o'clock curfew that day in Manchester. I'll just give a little background. On March, that was June 2nd. On May 30th, there was a march, you know, because of the George Floyd murder and, you know, activists for racial justice, where it went to Victory Park, and they marched. It was peaceful. Everything BLM did in New Hampshire, and generally across the United States, was peaceful. And some of the whoever showed up went to the police station and had a sit-in. And I think Carl, the then Chief Capano, talked to them. But that might have been another time. I know that he would go out there and talk to the people. And that day, as they had to sit in, some person, I was going to say Yahoo, which used to be my employer, by the way. Can we have a 2-shot with me and Jim? Well, maybe just keep it on me, now that I think of it.
Okay.
We don't want to. This is my opinion. Some guy and his son in a truck flying a Trump flag confronts these peaceful protesters with a pistol and was arrested. So that was 3 days before this is happening. And some idiot who claimed to be, you know, for racial justice says, oh, we should, on June 2nd, the BLM had planned a candlelight vigil at Stark Park. And 700 people went, and it was perfectly peaceful. But some kid, days before, went on Facebook, said, oh, well, let's go and have a riot in South Willow Street. He's some kid from some rinky-dink town. Facebook took it down. The kid got arrested. And Levasseur posted that and talked all about, you know, it's Joe Levasseur, his fears of a riot, his office is on South Willow Street. He'd called a African-American activist with BLM a zipperhead. So it was an awful situation. I mean, the National Guard was there. Governor Sununu, I'm not a fan of, on racial issues, I'll give him some kudos. I'll give him some praise. You know, he was on this. They had the Guard. They had to have the police, the Manchester PD, in gear. Because a riot could have happened.
Yeah.
This
whole
situation.
I didn't, you know, on that, I didn't pay an awful lot of attention.
I didn't go
to that.
to
But I didn't know that the State Guard was there. That's news to me.
Yeah, I don't know how much the Guard was there.
Yeah.
Or they might have just had a command post ready, because that might provoke people.
Yeah, I don't, because I mean, you know, it's all kind of ancient history now, but
for Victoria Sullivan, she doesn't go down. She goes down there, and she's with. I would say there is a militia movement in New Hampshire, which Chris Sununu. There's an excellent editorial by the head of Granite State Progress, the woman that's had the great. Her name is Hawkins. I can't remember her full name, and about that because this is under Trump. The militia movement has become such an integral part of the Trump movement Sununu was dealing it with kid gloves, even though they threatened him.
Well, it ended up, he ended up eventually with people protesting outside his house and
Right, that was
threatening
earlier in the
his
year.
house on the mask issue or the vaccination issue, whichever it was.
I think it was about Trump and the election, because remember he couldn't, and it could have been, probably was everything, the mask,
Right,
because they've
right.
been, there's a group, Remove Something, that is involved with this. And Victoria Sullivan, one of her closest allies, Carla Garricky, the former president of the Free State Project, who incidentally Sununu endorsed, even though she wants to take the state of New Hampshire out of the United States.
Right, right.
It's just that Victoria Sullivan's there with these people in a situation that's a tinderbox. Thankfully, the city of Manchester, Mayor Craig, Chief Capano, and Governor Sununu, it was handled well.
Right.
There were 13 arrests, but
Were there?
yeah.
Oh.
But it was basically like late at night,
At
very
late-
midnight, where they
late
were
on
throwing
that night.
cans at the police. And stuff
There was
like
a
that.
dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Literally,
disorderly.
literally a dumpster fire. I mean, usually that's a metaphorical. There was a dumpster fire, but there was somebody set fire to a dumpster.
Jim, I just want to say one thing. Can you show 5 annotated again? Brendan, those 6 weapons are all AR-15s, or the knockoffs, which is the civilian version of an M16, which I know, which is now called the M4. That is a very deadly rifle. I can testify to that fact.
Right.
I've never fired it in anger or anything, but I was around it extensively. That's not a toy.
Right.
And someone, when I published my article, and people were posting it like in the Facebook chat rooms for different voices. Oh well, they were hired guards. Hired security guards have to be licensed.
There
They
were
don't carry M16s.
there were clearly messages on that week all over social media calling on whatever you want to call it, the militia, Boogaloo Boys.
The Boogaloo Boys were here.
All of it. It was come to Manchester, come to Manchester. This is your moment to take a stand. And
Boogaloo Boys were here. They're anarchists that want a revolution. Not a revolution, but they want. Well, there's great articles in all the media, like the Atlantic, New York Times. They're looking for the downfall of America, this anarchy.
Right. Yeah. It's a strange world view to have. I mean, I obviously stand for much different things.
But this is part of the Republican
This is
Party.
it's sort of there's libertarianism and then there's anarchy, right? So like libertarianism, the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. I mean,
it's existed for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely, and and sort of, if you can call it mainstream libertarianism,
Yes,
sort of
mainstream.
small government, states' rights, self-determination. These are all good things, right? That people can argue about or discuss. But
it's a valid.
Yeah, they're part of the
valid.
mainstream political discourse, right? And so, I think I probably know a lot of people who fall into that category, who are distrustful of government generally, and et cetera. Now, that's perfectly fine in my world, and very rational. When you get to insurrection, the idea of being a secessionist. Right, the idea of
which is unconstitutional,
right,
by the way.
Absolutely, it's criminal in my mind, right? I mean, it's treasonous.
The Supreme Court ruled in 1866. No, and they even during the war, Taney, who the horrifying Dred Scott decision he authored, but he was a Southerner, but he was from Maryland, the border state. They had a case where the South can't secede, but Lincoln and the United States can't stop it, which Lincoln just ignored him because Lincoln was a genius.
Right. A pragmatist.
Secession is unconstitutional.
Right. So this idea, I've lived abroad and in numerous places, etc. And I just it's amazing. I have never spoken to someone. I don't say never is a very absolute term, but generally speaking, I don't know of any. I've been all over the world, and I can't think of a conversation at a kitchen table in a bar or anything where there were people as anti-American in the sense of anti-American establishment, anti-American
Anti-United
government,
States of America.
anti-United States of America. I've never ever met people as anti-American, let's call it American government for what a word, as some of the people I meet here in the United States. I mean, it's like
it's absurd. It's absurd in the way when you're countries that are poor or countries that are oppressed. Because I was a Soviet Union analyst, and I've met plenty of people from the Soviet Union.
Right.
My ex-girlfriend was born in the Soviet Union, and now they have their own countries. But it's quite a different thing when somebody that was like Solzhenitsyn's good friend, and one of the Samzadat, one of the people that had to be exiled from the USSR. And then people talk about because they have to pay taxes for schools, they're being oppressed.
Right.
Sorry, Tim.
I don't. So anyway, this is like
It's not the same thing.
Go back to where we are with regard to local politics.
It's crazy.
I'm fine with people across the political spectrum and having to. I talk to people all the time.
Yeah.
who don't agree with my view of the world. I don't want to be, I'd love people to come together. And people say, someone said on social media yesterday, I'd love to live in the la-la land or something that you live in, the la-la school land that you live in. And it's not a la-la land. I just keep repeating the fact that I have great faith and confidence in the future of Manchester. I know our schools need an awful lot of work and a lot of help, and I'd really like people to come together and to shoulder the wheel, move things forward, and make our schools the best schools in the state. And this is the fault line for me about the people who are outside, like the barbarians at the gate, and they're screaming at the public school system, trying to tear it down. They attack it every opportunity they get. There are people from Manchester, which bugs the you-know-what out of me, when public representatives get elected out of Manchester, go up to Concord, and then proceed to vote to defund and to reduce the monies coming to the state of New Hampshire.
And Victoria Sullivan and her close ally, Tammy Simmons, who was formerly the head of the Republican GOP in Manchester, are two of those people. They're part of the people that...
Well, was Tammy ever a public representative?
Yeah, from Ward 10.
Was she elected?
And she voted against the ward. She voted against... We have Exit 4 that we need. Right. Let's not... Why improve Exit 4?
Right.
Why spend money?
But
one of the craziest things they've said, and I think it was Victoria Sullivan in the debate with Joyce Craig, is they were talking... It might have been or afterwards, but no, we don't need federal or state grant to apply for federal state grant money because that's our taxes money. They're taxing us. And it's just, are you
let's
real?
Go, right, let's go
Are
to...
you real? We send our dollar to Washington, we get 71 cents back.
Right.
It's those welfare queens that are Trump territory, like Arizona and Alaska, that are...
Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas,
suck it all up.
Missouri, Texas, like let's pick one.
But it's our right to this money.
Right. But I when you point this out, I think that, we crossed another line a couple of weeks ago when the Executive Council voted not to accept $27+ million
Ted Gatzis
of funding, because this bothers me about Ted Gatzis because I didn't previously have Ted Gatzis in the sort of bucket, on the side of the Republican Party. Then, with great respect, in my view, has lost the plot. Right, so
Gatzis would not apply for federal grants.
Well, I know that
Joyce brought that up in 2015.
I know that he voted down, accepting additional police officers in Manchester at one point and his point then at least, this was whether that
they only give the money for 3 years, and then we'd have to pay for it.
Right, so that seemed reasonable, right? I mean, I didn't agree with it. Reason was the wrong word. Let me say, like from his worldview, I'm thinking, well, it makes sense from the way he looks at the world.
Well, remember under him. Chief Mara was 38 officers under the quota, and we had the spice, which became the opiate epidemic, and Joyce Craig and the Craig long budget got him the officers he needed, and.
So back to, this I want to go back to just this issue of voting down to $27 million. So I back to like respecting other people's opinions. It made sense. I said reasonable. It wasn't reasonable. It made sense. But I'm saying, okay, well, that's who Ted Gatzis is. He's a conservative. He's going to be very fiscally, careful, and therefore he's not going to add three free police officers to the city of Manchester because we might end up having to pay for it in 3 years. That's an awful long way.
Only 3 officers.
Yeah, it's an awful long way from there to refusing $27 million of federal funds, the only state in the United States of America not to accept it. And we found out in the last week that vaccinations for people under the age of 18 in the state of New Hampshire are now going to be delayed as a direct result. The other thing is, from an economic point of view, $27 million being spent in your state. I know, for instance, that there were a number of nurses who had been hired and were due to start on the Monday after that meeting in anticipation. Everybody thought it was a pro forma. There's no way any reasonable person would turn down this thing. Letters had to go back out, or messages had to go back out to all those people who had given their notice at their other jobs and told, sorry, there are no jobs for you. So the bottom line is there's $27.5 million less being spent in the New Hampshire economy, and it's still our money being spent someplace else. So it's in New York or it's in Alabama or wherever it is, but it ain't in Manchester, and it ain't. So
who's living in La La Land, or as we would say, don't they used to say in the UK, Cloud Cuckoo Land?
Cloud Cuckoo Land. And the other thing is, and it's all, and this is the part that bothers me, because if pragmatic people who I thought were closer to the mainstream, right wing,
just Katz, this is just economically,
and now I find out that no, he's in league with and dancing in the same with people who are. He
wants to be governor, Jim. He always did.
Well, if he wants to be governor, I don't know what state he wants to be governor of. But if he wants to be governor of a state that's made up of people who are, anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers and anti-science and believe the world is flat and that we never landed on the moon and that the world is only 3,000 years old and dinosaurs live the same as people, the whole long list of the crap that these people believe. It's all nonsense, unscientific, illogical, bordering paranoid, psychotic nonsense, and they all have it in one big sort of, wrapped in one big like an Easter. If that's the market he's going after, he's going to get a big fright. He'll run for governor and he'll find that while they might seem like a lot of people on a place like Facebook or shouting at City Hall or coming to meetings, they're probably about 5% of the people, and I'm frightened that we even have 5% people as crazy as that in our state.
Jim, I'd just like to say one thing. Victoria Sullivan, back in 2019, in front of Millie the Mill Girl, Victoria Sullivan announced her candidacy with Will Infantine as her chairman, and he said, this will be good because we'll have 2 ladies. And, so we won't have any mudslinging. First of all, I think it was fitting to be in front of... And she made this stirring speech, if you're a Victoria Sullivan supporter, about the women of Manchester escaping some famine. And I'm thinking, well, she does have Sullivan on her name, and I think I wrote at the time, but that's her husband's name. Why? What famine is they escaping from, the women of Manchester? And I would think it was the famine of wages, of low wages, because you remember Will Infantine made national headlines when he, as a state rep, said that women shouldn't be paid as much as really? Women. Oh yeah, don't you remember? There's so much craziness. You forget about this stuff.
I try not to retain some of this stuff because it's like.
Well, I do because I write about it. I have an archive.
Right.
Jim, she's been hitting Joyce. And we're going to stop talking about her right after this, about crime, as you know.
Right.
In October, U.S. News and World Report said that Manchester is the 6th safest city in the United States. Also, earlier, the week before, the Wall Street Journal and Realtor.com put it as the number 11th safest city. Wallet Hub had it as Manchester the same month, earlier in October, as the 13th safest city. These are all rating Manchester as one of the top 15 cities to live in. And indeed, the Wall Street U.S. News and World Report said this is the 24th best city in the United States to retire to and commented. You don't see a New England city typically being good for retirement. So this is Joyce Craig's, the reality of Joyce Craig's Queen City. It's not.
Well, I think a couple of things. Yeah. First of all, I mean, it's political season, so people, especially people who are not, and I don't want to be insulting at all, I just think it's the truth, right? People who are not really viable candidates who have little chance of winning
Which
whose own
is-
party
yeah.
is divided. And so you scramble. It's like jumping in to save a drowning woman or man, right? They they
she
grab
is
you.
desperate.
And yeah. So anyway, and mudslinging happens, and I'm very like sitting here today. I'm very conscious of we're heading into an election on Tuesday, and there's some dirty pool going on. And I don't really want to be part of it. You know what I mean? I think
Right.
that's why I talk about the issues of where people are on the issue side.
Well, we're going to move to education.
Well, okay, but I just to say that
Yeah.
like whatever people want to say, the fact is that Manchester, if you've lived in other cities in the United States. And then you come to live in Manchester, you realize that Manchester is a pretty darn good place to live and a pretty safe place to live.
And under Mayor Joyce Craig, it's won back that reputation that got lost.
I have to say, and because it's the week that's in it, I am shocked and saddened by the death of Tambo Mbungu
Right.
this weekend. I still don't. We don't know what happened, etc. But that is I think it's a cathartic event for some young people in the city. He was a 20-year-old kid, former captain of the Central soccer team. And I think about Chris LeBurge and his program at Central Soccer, which is a wonderful program that's done amazing things for minorities and everybody else in the city over his close to 20-year term.
The whole community.
But a former captain of the soccer team from a few years ago, MacDonald, was killed in an accident just less than a month ago, and now we have this young man as well. There have been some big hits in Central High School. This is another hit, albeit people who are not there right now. But it's a very sad day. I was in New York on Sunday. I came back to this news, and I know a lot of people are affected by it. But I really dislike people who jump on the bandwagon. And people have been using this tragic event for political purposes.
Should
and
I
that's,
mention
that's,
what-
that's
yeah.
reprehensible. I'm not naming who's
Let's-
doing it. I'm just saying that it's awful to be doing that. It's a tragic event. It's terrible, and let's run on the issues as far as I'm concerned.
It's shameful.
Yeah. So
And we won't even talk about it because I brought that up earlier before we came on the show.
Oh, you
About,
did? Yeah.
Well, about a certain politician.
Oh, yeah.
And
So-
it's too ugly what this politician, who's she's going to lose by a landslide.
Yeah. Well,
I hope people come out though, because
people need to come out.
people
and vote.
need to come out and vote. You just can't take this for granted.
If you're there's two ways of looking at this, right? So I'm thinking about the ultimate at large
down
race.
ticket's important,
The down
too.
ticket, the ultimate at large race. If you're a political junkie or people who are
Right.
interested in politics in the city of Manchester, I mean, as there's a saying in Ireland about there's eating and drinking in that. There's eating and drinking, and you can get into it in many ways. The aldermanic race, the idea that you have the established Dan O'Neill and Joe Kelly Levasseur, and being challenged by
two strong
candidates, June
candidates.
Trusciani and
Dan
Dan Goonan, and they all are very different people, and I mean it's so there's great reason to come out and have one's voice heard.
I would like to. Can we see number one? This is just a brief thing. Here is Alderman at Large Joe Kelly Levasseur speaking about somebody capitalizing a tragedy, saying he knew. I mean, I'm not going to go into it because this is an attorney at law. And in Anglo-Saxon justice for 1,000 years, you can lie inside a courtroom as long as you believe the instructions of your client. But attorneys aren't supposed to lie and say stuff like this outside of the courtroom. But I bring this up because of two. You know Anna Marie Banfield, who's always injecting herself into...
Anna Marie Banfield, yeah, I
Right.
know.
Can we see number two? She chimes in on one of Levasseur's, this very thing. Oh, the memes are going to be good. Here's somebody, what a voice of compassion, huh?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's always the problem. I just wrote an article about why haven't Victoria Sullivan and Barbara Shaw, why did they call out Levasseur? They will go on to the most misogynistic posts that he makes, and he'll post just to get his
Yeah.
crew going.
So
And-
I'm not.
But they say nothing
Yeah,
about it.
I have no idea what Joe may post or not because I'm not.
It's time for Lavessa to be off that
I'm
board.
not. I'm not. Yeah. Well, my. So
Let's not.
Yeah, no, but
just drop it.
but you say things. I just can't ignore them. So like as far as Joe Kelly the Master is concerned, I mean, Joe likes to be controversial and he likes to throw stuff out there. It's like throwing stuff
Right.
against the wall to see what will stick. If he was
Exactly.
measured by by the accuracy of what he says, and I don't want to insult Joe because I'll be meeting him tomorrow night probably, or tomorrow probably, but. But if he was to be measured by the accuracy of what he says, he's a bit loose-lipped when it comes to like throwing stuff out, and the numbers are never quite right, the facts aren't ever quite right, and so for him to say something like he knows, obviously he doesn't know, he wasn't there, he doesn't know, but he cares less, doesn't care as much about sort of how the consequence of what he says.
It's the kind of demagoguery that doesn't help.
But it's this is the thing that bothers me,
That's the
right?
city.
So like Joe has been an alderman for 10 years at least.
Since he's 2011 as alderman at large, and he was an alderman for a
Right.
term before that.
And I just he's a contrarian and he prides himself on that. But the question is, like, at what point do you get to stop saying they need to do this and you guys should do this? I hear him at Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, and he says, you guys need to, I'm like, who are you guys? You are the establishment. You've been here for 10 years. If after 10 years you can't do something to fix it, or you don't have a proposal to fix things, then I think it's time to get out of the way and let somebody in who has thoughts about how to do it better.
I agree totally. Can we see 10? That's the Board of Aldermen, the chamber, and that's Bill Cashin. He had a record 16 terms from Ward 10. He was a
Right.
very close friend of mine, and that's his close friend Bill Barry, and of course he knew Norm Gamache forever.
Oh,
They're
by
both
the way,
from the West Side.
happy birthday to our friend Bill Barry. It was his birthday
That's
this week.
right. And yesterday was Matt Connerton. But I'm just saying, if Bill Cashin was chairman of that board, there would be no Lavasser antics. There wouldn't, because
Right.
he kept his his mayors closely.
Well, one of my criticisms
of a close leash.
of
the board did.
people said I never, that I have never criticized Joyce Craig. Well, I've got one criticism that I've had of Joyce Craig, and it's that she doesn't use the gavel as much as I think she should.
To be honest, Bill Cashin, who knew everything about politics, sitting with him and the president, Joe Biden, he had started in municipal politics. And I remember Joyce Craig was there, and he said, "Oh my God, the worst was being a city councilman,
Right.
a board of zoning. It's worse than anything I experienced in the Senate." And everybody's laughing, but it's true. But the chairman of the board actually is the one to stop the Joe Lavassers.
Right.
It's him, because it's a unique charter, which is a city
Well, it used-
that's been put together
Right.
and amalgamated from
It
pieces.
used to bother me last term, not so much this term, but it used to bother me last term on the Board of School Committee when one or two people just took over the meeting and had were able to speak 17 times on one topic, while all the other board members had little to say.
13, please hold.
We got a caller, Jim.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, one of the things is, it's so vital for people to come out and vote
Yeah,
on
please.
ticket, because it is the members of the board.
It's
of
amazing to
Aldermen.
drop off. It's amazing to drop off.
Caller, call back. Sorry that
it's amazing to drop off between let's say we have 25,000 people vote in the election on Tuesday, and I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, but I'm just saying it's likely that 25,000 people vote. Maybe 20 will vote for the down ballot races in terms of their aldermen,
Right.
and by the time you get to the school board, it might be 15. So a lot of people just vote for.
Brendan, is somebody still on there?
Hang up the phone.
Okay. Sorry.
So
Sorry, Jim.
That's all right. So some people, and it's their right, of course. I'm delighted they come out anyway, but they vote for mayor and then they're done.
Yeah.
And some people vote for mayor and alderman, and then they're like, well, I don't have a kid in the school system. I'm out of here. I think it's important to you still, if you're listening to this program and as it goes on over the week, you have time to check things out before you walk into the ballot
Right.
box and make a decision. And there are lots of candidates. There's lots of choices. People put themselves forward, and
Okay.
Go for it.
Hi, welcome to Ward 13.
Hey, how's it going? This is Peter Argeropoulos.
Oh, hello, Peter. How are you?
Hey, Pedro, mi caro amigo, ¿cómo está?
We've been trying to get to talk about education, but I've been talking about other things. But hello, and introduce yourself. We have Jim O'Connell's here.
Awesome. All right. Well, hello. So yeah, sorry, I just actually finished my extra help day after school, so I haven't really heard or been following along with what you guys are talking about. But my name's Peter Argeropoulos. I am one of the 4 candidates, along with Jim O'Connell, who is running for school board at large in Manchester. And in terms of who I am, I'm a person who has lived in Manchester my whole life. As I just said, I'm in the 7th grade science teacher in Nashua, and I'm running to help make a difference for students and families in the city of Manchester.
Jim, is there any question you have for Peter?
No, I have to say, like, I've been very, what would I say, interested and impressed with Peter. I'm very happy that to be running with him and encouraging people to vote for him, and me. Just to be clear.
You likely will be the top vote getter.
We'll see. We'll see.
It's important. We've been stressing, Peter, that people that come out for the election, because it looks like there's a lock on the mayor's race, and people might, I don't have to vote.
No,
you do have to vote. Come out and vote, but they have to vote down ticket. It's so vitally important. Who the members on that board are will determine the success of the mayor on both boards.
And I think if I could, and I just, the fact is that Peter and I complement each other wonderfully in so many different ways. Not just the fact that, Peter's got a wonderful Greek name and I've got a pretty decent Irish name. There are other nationalities in Manchester, and we're all American in the end. But to me, Peter can speak for himself. But I would just say, Peter represents the new Manchester to me. I often think about Manchester in terms of not east or west, north or south or whatever else, but rather the old and the new Manchester. And the old doesn't always follow with just the date of one's birth. But there's the new Manchester people who are excited about the future, want to see our schools grow, are confident in it, know that we can have great schools in Manchester and are ready to work for it. And having this combination of someone like me who's been around a little while, and then Peter who's certainly knows what he's talking about as a teacher and as a lifelong resident of the city, I think it's a wonderful, for people who want a balance on the school board. I don't think you could do better than vote for O'Connell and Argeropoulos.
Peter, tell us. I know that you're a lot younger than us, probably half our age. I was surprised because I have a lot of educators in my family, my nieces and their husbands. How much education has changed? I'm 62 years old.
Oh wow, yeah.
Things have changed so much. Can you tell us, between your experience as a student and as a teacher now, how has public school education changed?
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's a really great question, and it's one of the things I talk about oftentimes when I'm out talking with people. One of the lines I kind of use, and it's really true, is that education is kind of an ever-evolving field. We're always, as teachers and schools, working on improving our educational practices, what we're doing in the classroom to be able to meet the needs of students, not just in terms of learning, content, but also in able to have our students be able to build skills, and build personal relationship skills, build strategies where they can work on themselves emotionally, and all of these sorts of things. So when we think about all that, we're really pushing education away from what we used to see oftentimes, where it would just be a teacher standing at the front of the room, writing notes on the board, kids sit here, copy. Eventually we get to the end of a unit, take a test, and that's it. We're really working now towards something that we're trying to make it more engaging, because the first step to getting students to learning things is they have to want to learn those things. So getting that engagement. So we've really focused on education, pushing to try and get towards that, where we're doing things that are more interesting to students, working with group work, getting hands-on work, things like that. Also finding specific niches for certain students where they might be more interested in a certain field. And this really happens a little bit more later in the educational process for some students. But in middle school and high school, when we have students that are starting to really own in on something, maybe they like to work on cars, or maybe they're interested in working in makeup and hair design, and helping to students to identify that and be able to do those sorts of things in their education. So really changing this process. We're making sure we're meeting the needs of our students and families where they're at, and we're keeping up specifically in Manchester with the changing aspect of Manchester. So all of these things, I don't know if you can hear the intercom in the background here.
Oh, that's fine.
But all of these things are what we are working on in education and have seen change over the years. And in the short time I've been teaching, they've changed somewhat, and we're working to continually improve. But from the time I was a student, we've seen huge changes just in that time alone.
Yes, about several years ago, I read a fascinating book. It was called The Cognitive Classroom, and it was by Jerome Ricard. Jerome Ricard had been a member of the school board down in one of the, I think, Wyndham. And I know who he is because our good friend Rich Gerard attacked him continually. So then who is this person that's, and he was MIT, PhD, and he wrote a book, and I read it. And it is how, because of the introduction of, when you think of a computer, we call them computers, but there's more. It's an information technology, which has revolutionized consciousness. It actually has. Because remember, when we were dealing, as we got into our 20s and 30s, remember the PC when we were in our early 20s, Jim?
Yes,
and then it was the internet when we were heading towards 40, which revolutionized stuff. But the actual neuronal networks of children are affected by reading on devices. And it's, and essentially they have a different consciousness that has to be addressed. But I just want to say, it's not like Gerard and some of his people like Banfield say, oh, well, look at 1930 Manchester, the industrial paradigm, we should go back to that.
I was just going to say that. When people who believed, and I know that there are people who've actually, said that Manchester should go back to the curriculum it had in the 1930s. And I'm thinking to myself, the distance between that and what Peter's just talking about in terms of meeting the student as an individual, finding their hook, finding what it is that makes them want to learn and the thing that they're interested in. It boggles the mind that we will have candidates running for office in Manchester whose idea is that teaching is simply having a voice at the top of a room, whether in person or not, just rote learning. And in the Manchester School District, it's a big project and it takes a long time, but we are moving towards recognizing each student as an individual. You want to create, and Peter chimed in this, you want to create an actual educational environment that supports the students as they are now and lets them flourish, right? Right. If I could just say one
Absolutely.
Yes. So I would just say,
to that point, just to add in too, I do want to add in, a lot of times when some people hear these sorts of things that I'm discussing is how we're changing education. They kind of hear this idea that we're saying, okay, well, we're not going to focus on some of those basic fundamental skills still things like reading or math or things like that. And that is absolutely not the case. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. We're really trying to still focus on those things, but in some cases we're building the fundamental skills. But then once we have those skills down, we can embed those learning standards into the activities that we're doing. So maybe instead of seeing a student just have a problem written on their paper in math, for one example, they're actually solving a problem. And with that problem that they're presented, not only are they actually doing some reading and some writing, but they're also having to take that math skill that they've learned and now apply it to this situation, this real-world situation. So now we're not only focusing on the basics, we're taking it a step further, combining several different things all in one, reading, writing, math, and problem solving, and tackling these problems that are going to be more like what students will eventually see as no longer students after graduation, whether they go on to college or jump right into the workforce or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Right. And we see, when we look at the idea that we're simply going to create a lesson that is going to appeal to a generic imaginary group of supposed, say 11-year-olds in the United States. this year.
From the 1950s suburban America that
even
doesn't
today,
exist
the idea
anymore.
that we have classes and grades, right? So
we have a diverse student body too.
We have that too, but in terms of just age, right, and ability, etc., right, and development, it's we place these marks on a calendar and we say anybody born after this day is in 5th grade, anybody born before this day is in 6th grade, and then the youngest kids in 5th grade are a day away from the oldest kids in 4th grade, and the oldest kids in 5th grade are a day away from being the same age as the youngest in 6th grade. So between the top end of 5th grade and the bottom, and this is true for every grade, at the bottom end of 5th grade, there isn't any magic to saying that all 25 kids in the class, and hopefully it would be better if we had 20 or whatever it is, that they're sort of, homogenous, just one group, and they all think and are the same. And that's not true. Kids have different attributes, they have different talents, they have different propensities, different ideas, and as a district, we have to work hard to transform ourselves to thinking of, dealing with these students one-on-one. And I would just say one other thing. I remember a former school board member who I don't want to identify right now, but who often would say when the school district was doing something, and he would talk about, well, that's their problem if they don't want to respond to what we're doing. It was always the students' fault. Why aren't they? And it's never the students' fault if we have 20 students in a room and we can only engage 10 of them, then we're not doing something, there's something wrong with what we're doing.
Yeah, that old paradigm failed me because I hate to say it sounds egotistical. When I was in the 6th grade, I realized I was smarter than my teachers, but they just keep you plodding along. Whereas when my niece, they knew kids that were like gifted, they would be able to. Well, when she was in the 8th grade, they were sending her to the community college or stuff. Where I'm just,
Hey, Peter, do you remember a time when you would go to class, when you were a student, and you go to a class and some teacher would hand you a photocopied sheet of some multi-choice questions,
mimeograph,
which they'd been handing to class after class after class for the 22 years or 23 years of their career. I mean, do you remember those days?
He can't be that old.
Definitely things like that, right. And then to that point, too, when we're thinking about it, coming back to that idea, too, of differentiated per class, every single year when I start a new year, I walk into the class for the first time, there is a couple of weeks to, in some cases, months-long process where, we're getting to know the students. And we have to adapt in that class to the new students that are in front of us. Because every individual student is different. And then when you put that all together in a group as a class, that class is different and the makeup is different and what the kids are interested in is different and the different sort of supports the kids need are different. So it's important that every year, even if we have a curriculum with the standards we need to know and all these different things, being able to actually change how our approach to it and how we're going to actually meet the needs of our students is really important to be able to identify and make those changes from year to year, from class to class, to make sure we're actually meeting those needs. And then, of course, assessing that as we go and have informative and summative type assessments to see what the students are picking up on and then making minor tweaks from there to make sure that we're actually meeting the needs of those students and learning what we're supposed to be learning. But it is definitely important that we're doing those things. And one thing that I just wanted to hit on, too, real quick from that conversation of what you guys were saying, a big piece now, too, when we talk about the shift in education, is kind of a shift in mind frame from thinking of, okay, with learning, you get to a test, an assessment, and then you move on to the next unit. Well, that's what we've always done. But when we think about it, learning is a process that doesn't ever end. So just because you get to the end of a unit and you demonstrate you've learned X, Y, and Z, but maybe you're still missing A, B, and C, that doesn't mean you can't go back and learn A, B, and C. You should be able to do that in a way where you're now gaining that information, because we don't want students to just fail a test, not have the information, and move on. We need to make sure we're getting to all students so that the learning piece is actually done, and students are building skills, learning content that they need for future units and then future in life.
And this is where we come with with competency-based learning, right? So like we're looking at
Exactly.
at what the competencies are, as opposed to here's the rote learning that we've done the third week of September every year for the last 10 years for this generic whatever. But you spoke to it very well when you talked about individual students and of course making up then a unique classroom. And when it comes to going back to the politics of Tuesday and running for office, there are thoughtful people like Peter who know that which of they're speaking and have spent time at it and are ready to move this district forward, to make it an attractive place where our schools are well run, well managed, well financed, well resourced. And there are those who have these simplistic, uninformed, backward-looking views about, let's get back to reading, writing, arithmetic.
Well, let's get to
if the kids don't like it, let's get the strap out and beat them across the back of the head with it.
We only got 10 minutes left. I just want to go back to when I mentioned about my own experience. Later on, I would meet people my age that came from, like, I would call it at the time a more progressive schools where their needs were answered and they had a better educational experience. And one of the needs I found out only when I was in the Army at the Defense Language Institute, I had dyslexia. Now, I had an excellent memory.
Wow.
A tremendous memory, but I have dyslexia. And so I'd like let's talk about 4 or 5 minutes about special needs.
Okay.
Peter, would you like to address, as a teacher, about what the needs of special needs students, which there's been a lot of criticism in the Manchester School District that their needs aren't being met?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first step, in this process, I want to talk back in terms of as a teacher, and I'll go kind of quickly because I know we're running up against it here. But when we're coming back to that piece, getting to know students, it's really important that, as a teacher, for all students, whether we have a student who's been identified with something specifically that they need extra support for or not, that we are getting to know our students, learning what makes them work, and in some cases identifying as a teacher and working with the student, the family, and our support staff at the school to make sure if there is a situation where we think a student might need extra supports or something like that, then we are the ones to help identify that in some cases and bring that up. In terms of students who do have extra supports required, it's imperative that we're actually getting those supports for our students because we have identified that those are what the students actually need to be successful. Oftentimes on a political level, we talk about general things in the classroom and whatnot, but as a teacher and seeing the students in front of me, these supports are really what can make the difference of a student being successful or not.
Yes.
So by making sure we are having our schools have the support staff that we need in place is an important piece to this, just having the people there. So if we have paraprofessionals that are supposed to be in a class with certain students or a student, we need to be able to make sure we're meeting that requirement. We need to make sure that we're offering professional development in some cases so that teachers are trained on the certain supports that students need nowadays as education continues to evolve. And we just need to make sure that when we are working with our families, that we always have that engagement with families, having those discussions. It's always really important when I go to meetings that I, as the teacher, come with my observations, what I think is working, what I don't think is working, work with, depending on the case, either the special ed teacher, whoever's handling 504s at a school. In some cases, if we're having a meeting with a student who's learning English, we need to make sure we're bringing the families to have those discussions too, because that's very valuable. We work as a team in a school to make sure we're meeting these things for our students and having success for our students. So those are kind of, because of short time, the most important elements that I see when it comes to these sorts of things.
Right.
And the school board can help make that happen.
Well, yeah. So driving the big stuff, and Peter's, so eloquent and correct in what he has said, and astute. The challenge is that sometimes in the institution, which is the school district, sees it as almost burdensome. That they have to respond to these needs. Now, it's like they look at it through the prism of money, for instance. How much is this going to cost? And I get frustrated by hearing that, well, yeah, but we don't have that equipment. Well, why don't we have that equipment? I mean, we can't have everything. I understand. But how do we go through a budget process this year, last year, the year before, and the year before that, and you knew all along that we needed whatever these services were, whatever these people were, but you didn't bother to ask because, well, it's Manchester and we're not going to get it. This is the thing that bothers me.
These kids have rights.
Right.
Too,
well, they do,
now.
and I keep hearing from people who've got children with IEPs that they have to fight for the services that they not just need, but that they are mandated to get.
Right.
And yet we are, I know it's very hard. Right now, nurses are very hard to get. If a kid is identified and they need a nurse with them every day, that's a pretty onerous requirement. But it's a requirement. It's a life safety issue. They're required there for a reason. And I understand it's frustrating to go and find a nurse when there are not many around.
So the school board, you can, both you and Peter on the school board, and you and the school board have been fighting for this, I know. And you could use allies.
Absolutely.
Like Gary Hamer and Ken Roy. Over in Ward 10 and Ward 12.
Right.
And but the school board can actually, I know sometimes it's a Sisyphean labor, rolling that stone up.
Right.
You could use some extra hands.
Absolutely.
But the school board can actually affect this. And,
Right.
And will affect the kids.
Yeah, and having voices there of someone like Peter who knows what he's talking about, like I said, who's got a mature view and a modern view and et cetera.
And has the experience of being a teacher.
Yeah, and the passion for
right
children.
now.
In the end, it's about kids and success. I mean, my reason for being involved in education is because of all the levers that we can pull as a society to influence change long term. Is education. Clearly, it's every dollar we spend on education, every hour we spend lifting a kid up is tenfold savings over what we're going to spend in terms of incarceration and legal and policing and welfare, etc.
Okay, Peter, we only got a couple. Take a couple of minutes, and we'll leave it up to you. If you have anything more to say, which I'm sure you do.
Sure, no.
But we got two more minutes.
Just because we're, up against it here, I'll try to go fast. The election, I heard as I came in, you guys were talking about this a little bit, is next Tuesday, November 2nd. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Myself and Jim are both running for these at-large positions, which means we are on the ballot no matter what ward you are voting in. And it is really, really important to not only get out and vote, to make a plan to vote, but also, as we said, to vote for all the positions besides just the mayor. That's really, really important because these people are the ones who directly affect the lives of the city of Manchester's residents. So it's really important to get out and vote. I'm a person, as I said, I'm a teacher. I'm someone who went into teaching because I want to help students and families, and I'm very passionate about my home community of Manchester. And I want to help to fight to bring this change to Manchester and support our district so that our students and families receive the education and the supports in their educational day that they need to be successful, not only in their educational journey, but for afterlife. I believe that public education should be about supporting these goals of students and opening doors. And I believe that a solid public education system acts as a solid foundation in the community. So I'm asking if you could please come out to the polls on November 2nd and support myself for school board at large and Jim O'Connell. We are two people who want to fight to make a difference for the students and families and really push to help get the supports needed so kids and families can be successful.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Peter. Talk to you soon.
You have my vote. Now, Jim, I know this might be impossible, but you got 1 minute.
I could sing a song, but I could say this, yes, I'm running for office. I appeal to you and ask for your vote. I've been in office. I was elected for the first time 2 years ago. I have tried very hard to worked very hard on behalf of the people of Manchester. I take great pride in the fact that I respond to every email and phone call that I get, wherever it may be. I'm always accessible to people all across the city. But it strikes me as I listen to Peter Argeropoulos speak just now, what a great example. There's a guy who's a product of the Manchester school system from 4 years ago, or more than that, 5 or 6 years ago. So there's a guy who's articulate, knowledgeable, well-trained, ready for prime time. That's what those are the people that Manchester school system should be churning out every day. So we have a city made up of people ready to be citizens and productive members of society.
Thank you, Jim, and to the people of Manchester. Joyce Craig was just endorsed by Billy Shea and Mike Lopez. So but you got to get out there and vote. Vote for mayor and vote Don ballot. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.